Yeah, doctor, we could all use a relaxing vacation right now, but sometimes it just doesn't work, does it? Classic Doctor Who review time. Got it in just before the end of the month because the other one that I had done this month was so short, I decided to not really count it. This one is going to be Castrovalva, the very first adventure for the Fifth Doctor, or at least the first one aired. Not the first one shot for actually, I think, a pretty sound reason. I'll get to that in a moment. The reason I am doing this one is because the writer of this particular episode, Christopher Bidmead, unfortunately passed away last month. So, in recognition of that, this is the one we're doing. This was not the only episode of Doctor Who he wrote, but this is the one we're going to tackle. So, I mentioned this is not the first one that Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor filmed. It was just the first one aired. They deliberately had the shooting block that included this one come later after he'd already done a few episodes so that he was a bit more settled into the part. And that was pretty important given that he spends most of this episode trying to get a sense of himself and a little bit wonky. Now, you might think, well, why does he need to know how he's going to be playing the Doctor by the end for that to work? Well, in order to play a character as off, you do have to kind of know what their normal is, or at least is going to be going forward. That's going to give you the best ability to do that. And I do think it actually paid off. I think there was a good call for them on this. So this immediately follows on from Logopolis, which I have not done a review on the channel. I'll get to it one of these days. That's one of those ones I have seen but don't have a review up on YouTube for it. But this follows on immediately from that. So the Doctor has just regenerated, and I'm honestly usually kind of partial to the post-regeneration wonkiness. I like when the show leans into that and the ways that it leans into it. Usually it can go wrong. Sixth Doctor. But the general idea that the Doctor just isn't quite himself yet and isn't even really sure who that is, I think is a fun thing to play with. And I'd say this leans into it possibly the most of anything in the classic era. I mean, you could argue the Sixth Doctor, except I would say that his outbursts were actually irritatingly representative of how he would be, as opposed to being like an early wonkiness. But anyways, so we have a Doctor who is not doing great, like openly admitting something feels off about this regeneration. It might actually be unraveling and coming apart. And how do we deal with that? So most of this I remember pretty well because I had seen this before. And there's a lot that's quite good about it. I like that early on you have the Doctor getting to have little moments of channeling earlier Doctors. Some of them are just real quick single line references like we get for the Fourth Doctor and the Third Doctor. For the first and the second, though, he has these little moments that feel like he's legit channeling the performances of William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton, respectively. And they're just neat little moments. And there's also something really cool about watching him, first of all, literally slowly unravel the scarf of the Fourth Doctor, but also, like, even after he does that, start just taking off piece by piece the costume, just slowly unbecoming who he was. Then he gets into the cricket outfit, which I think is one of the more boring outfits they ever saddled the Doctor in, but it's the Fifth Doctor's outfit. It is what it is. Even he doesn't seem that thrilled with it. He's kind of like, well, I'll get used to it. I'm like, you could just pick a different outfit, but okay, fine. We'll get used to it. So the Master is still in play in this. Actually, at the very beginning, the Master basically kidnaps Adric, and there's a couple of contrived moments early on where, like, so how much do I want to explain this? So Nyssa and Tegan get the Doctor into the TARDIS, and the Master's TARDIS shows up, and then when the Master's TARDIS goes away, there's Adric, and like, granted, Nyssa and Tegan don't really know that the Master did anything to Adric necessarily, but you did just recover a guy who appeared to have had some kind of encounter with a notorious hypnotist, and when you get him on board, you let him just wander off, even though he's acting a little out of character. Really? Really? Okay. It's one of those kind of hands of the author moments. The writer decided they won't notice this because it's what enables the plot to happen. But I'm over here like, they should, though. They should notice that. But there's a lot of neat ideas in this. We have the ideas of jettisoning rooms and this notion of the zero room for the Doctor to try and recover and really get his feet under him. And then when circumstances happen as such where they have to jettison a whole bunch of the TARDIS in order to get more thrust and get away from a situation the Master tried to put them in, then they no longer have the zero room. And so they end up on a place called Castrovalva, which is supposed to be incredibly calming, which will theoretically help the Doctor. Now, here's the part I had completely forgotten. I forgot how populated Castrovalva was. Like, all I really remembered was the Portreeve, I think is the guy's title. The old guy. I remembered him, and I remembered like how the plot kind of unraveled from there. I didn't remember there being like a whole bunch of other people who lived there. Including like the fact that you first see them in these weird sort of tribal outfits, which are very, very bizarre. Not like the strangest things that's ever been on Doctor Who, but it just feels very out of place with everything else. So I'd forgotten any of that, but some of it's actually kind of interesting. It's a bit spoilery to get into some of the details, and I will get into some of the details in a minute. But overall, I think the one other thing I want to mention before I get into spoiler details is I rather like how different tonally this is from a lot of classic Doctor Who of the era, because since the whole point is to get the Doctor to some place where he's supposed to be able to relax, and at least for a good chunk of it, he believes and he and his companions believe that that is what they have found, then the whole thing has a much more low-key energy than is typical. They do have an immediate danger situation for, the tail end of the first episode, but after that, it's pretty mild. And like the cliffhangers are not like, oh my gosh, we're about to die. It's like, that's odd. It's the kind of cliffhanger that normally you might get only at the end of the first part of a 4-parter, but you're getting those at part 2 and 3 because it's just more mellow as an overall thing. It is a kind of mood that I wouldn't necessarily want Doctor Who to do a ton more often, but like for a regeneration, let's ease you into this new Doctor as he is even figuring himself out, it's actually a really fitting mood. I liked that quite a bit. I dug it. So now I'm going to get a bit more into specifics, which does include spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe go do that. All right. So with that having been said, the Master, the Master loves himself a disguise, and disguising himself as the Portreeve, honestly, one of his better disguises. Like, it's not hard to see, especially watching now on an HD TV with upscaled, versions of the video, but I can certainly see how, especially broadcast in CRT TV quality, being picked up by rabbit ears on a TV, how it probably was pretty convincing that this was not the Master, that this was a completely different character. And he brings, a good amount of difference in terms of the physical portrayal and the vocalization of the character. There's a couple little moments with some of his line delivery where I'm like, I'm hearing you a little bit there, but for the most part, no, it's one of his better disguises, I would say. I like the sort of, I don't want to call this episode timey-wimey, because it's not really, but it is dealing with some of the more slightly mind-bendy philosophical and or scientific concepts that I actually rather like. The notion of recursion gets brought up in the first episode, and I thought that was just like a bit of banter between Nyssa and Tegan, and actually circles back around at the tail end to ideally make it easier for the audience to understand what it is that is going on as we get into the situation where they're basically in a courtyard designed by MC Escher. And as things, just start looping back on each other, and I really like the Doctor, having one of the residents of Castrovalva draw a map and be like, okay, mark stuff on the map. Cool. Where's your pharmacy? And he's like, well, it's here, and it's here, and here, and here. And he doesn't have 4 pharmacies. He has only 1 pharmacy, but it's in all these places simultaneously. And it's something he wasn't aware of before because, he just exists in it. That's his normal. But seeing it laid out in 2D on a map, suddenly it's like, wait a minute. And I actually really like the performances because it's a couple of characters coming to this slow realization that their world is impossible and unreal. And like the little detail that their history books, which are, clearly old, these are like 500-year-old books, but the history recorded into them goes up to the present day. Why would present day history be recorded in a 500-year-old book? Because it's fake. It's all fake. And I like the notion of the master having to create this place that was convincing enough, meaning that these illusions, these shadows of people have to have enough awareness to basically be able to exist without his direct direction. Like, he can't, he could try, but like it would be a waste of his time and energy to direct everything that they do at every moment. So they're just kind of running on very basic personalities and this recursive logic so that they don't question the reality that they're in. And I like that towards the end, they rebel. They take agency for themselves and use it against a man who created them and in his creation of them denied them agency. I like that. I thought that was a really kind of cathartic way to wrap that up, because the Doctor made these people as pawns, as tools, as not people. But they are enough of being people. Of each of them is enough of a person that they have a right to go, screw that. I'm gonna do my own thing and mess up your plans. And I really like that. That was real good stuff. I feel bad for Adric. Like, you can kind of feel in this episode that they're already being like, we don't really know what to do with this kid. Because like, what is there to do? He's young, he's a little annoying, he's a math genius. Okay, the master kidnaps him and uses him as a supercomputer, effectively. That's, functionally within the story, that's something to do with him, but it does feel like they're trying to keep him out of the story as much as possible, which, yeah, Adric had a rough run. And I know, like, people are, like, mad that he was a bad character. I think the bigger problem was the writers came up with a character concept that they did not have a lot of actual ideas for. And I think they started running into that problem really early, if this episode is any indication at all. But yeah, as a first episode, I think this is one of the stronger, especially because like it's not a case of the Doctor regenerated and then has to deal with the thing. The whole thing is about the Doctor regenerating, and yes, he has to deal with the Master, but like he is the focus. This isn't a case of the Doctor regenerated and then has to do all this stuff. That's part of what lends itself to that more low-key mood I mentioned before, that the point is, will the Doctor get enough of a handle of himself to be able to deal with what's going on? Not that what's going on is a threat to anybody other than him and his companions, because it's not. It's not a world threatening issue. It's not a galactic, threat to anybody. It's just like only he and his companions are in danger, and I like scaling it down to that right off the bat. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It does bum me out a little bit that I don't like the Fifth Doctor's era more than I do, because this is a really good start, like legitimately. Also, I either didn't realize or had forgotten that the celery on his lapel kind of has an origin story that is in this. Yeah, odd moment. Although, if the celery came from Castrovalva, should it even continue to exist? I don't know. Who knows? But Castrovalva, Fifth Doctor's first ever story. What did you think about this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Oh, I suppose the other thing I'll mention is Nyssa and Tegan, the two of them together, good chemistry. I get why people started shipping them and why that was canonized later. But Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those also help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lutfulla, Monty Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Alyssa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, Pau Barabajoggle, and Sir Didymus is my favorite, as well as Welsh Wrestling Geeks. So, folks said they wanted the rats back. Here they are. I really should have not worn something that exposed this much skin. Their nails are sharp. Ow. Oh, you guys. Get back here. Butthead.